Hey guys, today we're back on the Jaymz Type TL telecaster type guitar. Um, Today I've been messing around with it a bit, but I'm feeling these frets really bad, and it's a very low end guitar, so they didn't put a lot into cleaning up the ends. The frets are level, and that everything was really good that way. It's just they didn't put the extra time and effort into rounding out the edges of the frets. And I've been finding a little buzzing in the large E. So we're going to check the setup and go at those edges. Now I can feel them here when I run my fingers up and down the sides. I don't know if it's sprout, what they call fret sprout, where they've actually come out, probably because this neck is probably still adjusting. It's not coated. It's coated, but it's still fresh, so it might still be adjusting. But either way we go about it, today we are going to attack those ends and round them out, check the setup, and then we'll see what else needs to be done. Hopefully nothing. Off to the bench. So we've checked string height at the 12th, and it was like 175 pretty much all across the board. So I look down the neck, and what we're finding is it's really close up at here. Like for instance, you should really have about 0.020 inch under the fat two strings, and then about 0.018 and 0.016, and it's too low. So I looked down the neck, it was fairly straight. We're gonna give it a little more relief, which is going to be loosening the truss rod, which is this adjustment in here, for which you will need a 6-sided L-shaped adjustment tool. Not a paid promotion. But always loosen off the strings, even if you're loosening it. What loosening is, it will bring the head up and put a little more curvature in the neck. And so that should give us a little more room here. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. So we're gonna always do your setup on the old strings, and always loosen the skinny strings first so that you don't take a chance at breaking them. Because I think, we might be changing the strings anyways, but whenever you do a setup, always do them on the old strings. Okay, we're going to need the rope for the rope trick, which is to take a piece of string up through the bottom, 3 strings on either side, and then you can tie this behind the back of the neck, and which will basically give you a little more room and give you a good clear access to the fretboard. All right, so don't need to do that first because we were going to do a stinking truss rod adjustment. So I was saying the truss rod adjustment. The truss rod is a metal beam that goes down through the center of the neck. It is between the fretboard and the back of the neck, and it goes from about here to here. What it does is it has a slight bow to it this way, and then as you tighten this, it's going to want to make that shorter, which is going to bring up the center of the rod and in essence push down on here. But we want to loosen it. That way it's going to give a little more bow and come that way. So loosening left-handed, so always make double sure. That's going to come this way, and we're going to give it about, you really only want to do about 1/4 of a turn each time I'm going to probably go a bit more because it was rather low. And then we're going to bring it back up to tune, or back up to rough tune. You don't have to get it into perfect tune because you're just wanting enough pressure to be able to tell what the action is. So you want it in rough tune. Yeah, get the largest string figured out and then just earball it from there. So we've brought it up to rough tune and we're still not quite there, and you can tell because when I try to put the 0.020 feeler gauge in there, it just pushes up a bit on the string. The first one anyways. I don't think I can raise it enough at that end. Next we're going to go to the 18 and check the center two. The center two are fairly good. We will be able to do the rest of that with the saddle. And those two might even be a little bit high. Okay, well, let's raise this bottom one by using the saddle. So now I've loosened off the tension on this here one because that's the largest E. That's what we're wanting to raise up, and then you get a miniature six-sided L-shape adjustment tool and put it down in there, and we're going to give this pretty much a full turn, maybe 2 turns, just to be sure, because the other ones out here were a little high. We might have to drop them a little bit later, but let's bring that back up to tension and check it again to see just where it's sitting. So I've tweaked it back and forth between lowering the saddle and adjusting the truss rod. The truss rod now there is just a slightest bit of bow in it where I would like that, and this is still just a little bit low, but I think I'm gonna leave it this way. At this point, the next thing we would need to do is to mess with the nut, because I think this here large E has been cut just a little too deep, but we're going to leave it for now and move on to the next item, which is going to be adjusting the other strings, because I've got them about 2 all the way across. I would rather these ones down here, the skinnier ones, be about 1.75. So that we are going to adjust with the saddles. And that is by loosening these lugs. This is a 3-barrel style saddle setup where each one of these little lugs controls a different string. So basically I'm just going to loosen. When you loosen, you're going to drop the string height. Loosen is this way. I'm going to give them all about a half turn and measure again. So yes, I've come to the conclusion that the nut is not cut right. This here large E is too low. The middle 2 or 3 skinnier, not the one on the end, it's fine. The low E or the high E, the skinny E seems good, but these 3 in the middle look like they could probably get cut just a little bit more. But I've got 2 175 across the board for the rest of them, so we're just going to leave it at that for now. We've done the truss rod adjustment. We're going to let it sit and kind of meld into that shape over the next few days, but we do still have to attack those fret ends. Which means now we can finally go back to the rope trick, which I was saying before. You take 3 strings off of each side, don't forget to remove them from the string trees, because that will give you a little more room. Put string up, rope up from the bottom on either side, and then tie it off behind the back. And that gives you access to the fretboard fairly nicely. And because these ends up here where my thumb would be, because I've got it reversed, I'm going to be touching them the least. I'm going to practice on them. So what I'm doing is taking my little fret edging file, and I'm going to use my finger as a guide, because I don't want to go through all the hassle of taping it off just yet. I might have to anyways, but I'm going to use my finger as a guide, and then just sort of take that edge that we had on the corners and round it off a bit. It's going to take a while, so while I'm pushing down, I'm also rolling over to keep with the angle of the fret. I should probably stand up so I can see better. I'm going to do one, round it out as best I can, and then we'll inspect it closer to see how it worked out. And I am going to round it this way as well as curving this way. Because I want to make that edge roll as smoothly as possible. And as I say, if this was someone else's guitar, I would tape off all the fret part so that I don't mark it at all. But this guitar is going to be mine, so I'm just using my finger as a guide and being careful. Then you just run your finger along, go over the ones that aren't done, and you'll be able to tell where you stopped. And so there we are. We've brought it all back up to tune. The frets feel good now. There's still a couple that could be used. It could be adjusted a bit more, but they're way up in here. We'll do that next time we have the strings off. As I say, the nut was cut a little weird, so the thick E was cut a little low, and then the middle 3 could be cut a little bit lower just to kind of even it out. But I've got 2 millimeters on the fat E, and then about 175 across the board from there. That's where I want to play it. So we're going to leave it for a couple of days, see how the truss rod settles in. I've gone over the gaps. That's how I found out that this is still a little low. It should be about 0.020 of an inch. It grabs pretty good. And the third, fourth, and fifth are a little bit high, but I can mess with that. I can play with that. That's no problem. So that's it. Now all I got to do is get talent. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Tell me what I did right, did wrong. I know I do things wrong. I'm not a luthier, just an old guy with too much time on my hands. So with that, thanks for watching. Bye now.